Welcome to the Monday Monologue. And this week's topic is, phew, man, I've got so much going on right now on the channel, I don't even know where to start. And I'm trying not to be like squirrel and just getting lost. But let's kind of go through what's on the plate right now. We got the pass ACA, the parts came in for that, to put the real parts inside it and then test that and see what it turns out like. Hopefully it's going to be much better than it came over on the boat like. The next thing we're working on is kind of Gen 2 of the EAR 834 clone. I know I've done one of those on the channel before, but decided it was time to revisit that. I've built about a half dozen, I think maybe about 8 of them, and everybody I've sold one to just freaking loves them. And I wanted to show you guys why I can't compete what you can buy those things from AliExpress for. People have emailed me wanting to buy these, and then when I tell them, yeah, it's going to be $700, they're like, oh man, I can buy one from China for $300. It's like, oh, go buy it. You're going to see in the video why it takes so long for me to build one of these and how much higher quality this is, even though it's using the same circuit board that they're using. Plus, using a better transformer, and just buying the parts retail like I'm having to buy them, I can't sell them for those kind of prices. And honestly, I don't see that as my competition. So, going to go through that build. Then we got this hot mess, which, guys, I was really hoping that I was going to be able to just plug this thing in, test it. It was going to really look great, and there maybe be a couple of ground wires or maybe some power supply rewiring or figuring out, and then we'd be all done. But if you watch the video on this, on the test of it, it's got some issues. And like people say, it's not easy to build a really nice 300B amp. I found that out when I built my DIY budget one. But anyway, we got to fix this thing. I'm committed to making this work, and hopefully it's not such a big job that it's going to be so expensive or so involved to fix that they're like not worth fixing, or that when we're done it's still just mediocre, kind of like the A50 was. We were able to like double the performance of the A50, but at the end of the day it still didn't beat my budget DIY version, which I've never claimed that my 300B budget amp is like the end all on 300B amps. It's just a really decent sounding one. And if this can't be brought to that level, it's not worth buying for $1,500 and then spending another $600 on tubes and then having to do a bunch of mod work in it. By the time you're done, you're going to end up with $3,000 in it. And you could just go buy a fairly nice 300B amp for that doesn't have all these issues. Then here on the end, we got our KT120 Monoblock build. And I got all the parts in for it. I had to do a pretty big Mauser order to kind of get all the stuff inside. I still got to figure out how I'm going to lay out the power supply and all that stuff internally. And so, you know, that's another project that I really like to get some traction on, but I feel like that I probably need to, you know, this guy drop ship this amp to me. It doesn't need to sit here for 6 months while I'm building some other stuff. But I do feel like that I kind of owe the Nelson Pass fans a real review on this thing with good boards put inside it. And so, probably going to work on this and this kind of at the same time. Do a little bit of studying on this in the background. I know there's some folks that are super antsy about me fixing this thing so they can fix theirs or decide what they're going to do. I will tell people, if you're thinking about buying one of these, do not buy it right now. I have no idea where this is going to end up. It could be a simple fix, or this thing could turn out to just be a total hot mess. And so we know what the A50 is, so if you're chomping at the bit for an under $1,500 300B amp, the that you can do some mods to. Go check out the A50. Honestly, at the end of the day, it wasn't a bad amp. And for the price point those sell at, with as few mods as it really took to get that where it needed to be. I mean, it was just a handful of resistors and moving some wires around. Put some nicer coupling caps in it was just kind of icing on the cake. And of course, had to put some better tubes in it. Like all of these come with these junk PS Vane tubes. And I'm not saying all the PS Vane tubes are junk, but these, I'm going to call them the OEM tubes, the ones that they sell, these budget amp manufacturers, the tubes are junk. I mean, we tested a PS Vane 12AU7 that came in a little cheapo preamp some guy sent me once, about a year ago. And I thought, hey, here's some 12AU7s. Let's see what they sound like in that MusiShare. Man, they sounded horrible. I mean, the MusiShare tubes aren't great, but those PS Vane budget things that come in that cheap gear, they're junk. I mean, they're not even worth wasting electricity to listen to. So, anyway, I'm sure PS Vane, some of the higher end stuff is nice. Not sure PS Vane even makes these tubes. I'm not sure who makes them. Oh, and the other thing that I'm going to touch on, speaking of touching on, several people commented, oh my God, you're touching those tubes with your bare hands. What do people think that's going to do? It's not like, what, is it going to leach some sonic goodness out of them? These things don't get that hot. They don't even get as hot as like a 100-watt incandescent light bulb's going to get. This isn't like a halogen bulb that's in the headlight of your car that'll crack if you touch your skin oil to it. This isn't that same thing at all. And yeah, once I'm done and got the amp all finished, I get some alcohol on a cloth and wipe them off and, clean them all up so they look pretty. But you can touch these tubes with your fingers and it doesn't hurt anything. Now, obviously, when they're hot, you want to use a rag or, a towel or something if you're tube rolling and you don't want to wait too long between listening sessions. But there's no harm in touching tubes with your fingers. The other thing somebody asked me was about tube rolling. Do you have to turn off the amp? Absolutely. Do not pull tubes out of an amp with the amp turned on. I mean, I know you want to try to hot swap this stuff as quick as possible so you can A/B it. Guys, if there's enough difference to really matter, a minute or two, you're not going to forget what it sounded like. And you can go back and forth a couple of times if they're close. But don't pull the tubes out of one of these amps with them turned on or drop tubes in with them on. That's probably even worse. Plus, I mean, I don't know if there's a shock hazard or not, but these things do have insanely high voltages inside the chassis that are going to these tubes. Like this amp, those tubes got 400 volts in it. That's enough to kill you. It will make your heart stop if it arcs across your chest from one hand to the other. So be careful, guys. Don't do something stupid and end up dead playing with these things. Trying to think of what else is going on this week. Probably not a whole lot, if that's not enough. I do appreciate all you folks that have been so generous to drop ship these things to me for me to review and work on. And yeah, you're getting a deal because I'm doing the labor on here for free because I'm making content for my channel off of it. But they are trusting me, drop shipping an amp to me. They're willing to pay for the parts. Obviously, we worked that out before we actually do the work on the amp. And then they're paying the shipping back and forth, which to ship one of these things, it's going to be at least $125 to $140 one way. So you guys that have emailed me questions about your R8, what would it cost to do all the mods on it? If the $250 shipping back and forth gets in your way, then the $600 labor and parts to do the mods surely will. And again, that's why I'm not sure these are that great of value when you start considering paying someone else to do the work. And like, spent a lot of my life in the car repair business, and it's the same deal. You know, if you've got an older car and you can work on it yourself, it probably makes sense. But when you're paying somebody else to do all that work on it, it gets real expensive real fast. And if it's not something pretty cool, like a 68 Camaro or something, then it's probably not worth spending the thousands of dollars you're going to spend paying someone else to work on it for you. And so if you can't do this work yourself, you probably should start looking at some higher end price point products. Because even like that Musashare X7, which really didn't have a whole lot of issues, it's got a few small issues that need to be addressed that before they turn into a big problem. And if you can't do it, it's probably going to cost so much to have somebody else do it. You could be at the price point of buying a higher end product that doesn't need this work. Another thing I'm going to touch on today is I have a lot of people making comments like, oh, well, I've got this R8 and it sounds fantastic and I've had it for a year and I haven't had any problems with it. Well, I'm glad you haven't had any problems with it. And they do sound pretty good. But at the end of the day, they're just kind of a upper, low-level tube audio gear. There's nothing really special about them. And they do sound good because they're a tube amp. And if you're new to tube gear, you're probably thinking, man, these things really sound sweet. Well, it does compared to probably some lower level solid state gear you listen to, but compared to really nice tube gear, they don't sound that great. And while I haven't really sat down and listened to this, looking at its performance curves, I can't imagine this thing's going to blow me out of the water with how good it sounds. And it's probably not going to even sound as good as my budget 300B amp does. And it's nothing to just get all excited about. It's just a decent sounding tube amp. And honestly, if you don't need the power, and I keep telling people this over and over again, if you're happy with 1 or 2 watts of power, like people are going to say, oh, well, I've got some real efficient speakers and I'm only going to use like the first watt of this or whatever. Why are you buying a 300B amp if all you need is a watt of power? A good EL34 amp like that 6SQ7 EL34, and I'll put that up against just about anybody's amp, especially for how budget it is. So anyway, had to throw a rant into the Monday monologue. Hope you're enjoying my channel. We got a lot of fun content coming. I appreciate all your comments. I read every one of them, and I try to respond to the ones that people are, asking questions and stuff. So I hope y'all appreciate that. I do spend a lot of time sifting through the comments, and I enjoy reading them. I'm really excited that people seem to be enjoying my content as much as they do. This has really been a fun journey, and I plan on keep going with it. So anyway, if you're enjoying this content, subscribe to the channel. Please like the video. Again, thanks you Patreon folks. Thanks to you guys that are donation folks. Appreciate that too. That really helps a lot. Got a merch store too, so you can get some of these cool, well, I'm not wearing it today, but I got to get me a new Skunky shirt. I wore mine out. So go to the merch store, buy some cool merch, and we'll see you soon for the next Monday monologue.